Hi, I'm Jonathan Bank. I'm the artistic director of the Mint Theater Company, and I have been for 30 years. The question that I am asked most often, that I least like, is, how did you find it? Referring to whatever play it is that people have seen. And I should learn to just take that as a compliment that people liked the play and they wondered why it became lost or forgotten. But I tend to take offense because I say, for me, finding it is I'm not an archaeologist. I'm just a person with taste. So the question that I really want you to ask is, how did you know this was good? I wouldn't know what the answer to that would be, but when it comes to Crooked Cross by Sally Carson, how did you find it is a really easy one to answer. I didn't find it at all. You did. And what I mean is, back in February of this year, I got a couple of emails on the same day from two people who attend Mint Productions, sending me a link to an article in The Guardian about a book called Crooked Cross that was being reissued. It was a novel that was originally published in 1934, written by Sally Carson, went out of print. The article also mentions that there was a play that was produced in 1935 and in 1937. And the emails I got asked me if I could find the play, because the article made it sound really interesting. And in fact, it really is. Well, I did find the play. I was as interested as they were in reading this article. Crooked Cross. Well, the title itself is not clear, is it? I didn't know what that meant. Apparently, it meant swastika, and that's explained in the play. Curious thing. I thought that was common usage. I've discovered over the course of the last couple months that it wasn't at all. And when Sally Carson used the phrase Crooked Cross, she was telling you what she thought. Persephone Books, and Nicola Bowman, who is the founder and owner of Persephone Books, found the play. And Persephone Books is kind of the Mint Theater Company of publications. They search through history for lost and forgotten books, particularly by women. And when I began looking into who they were, it was interesting for me to note that the first novel that they republished, a novel by Cicely Hamilton, who was the author of Diana Dobson's, the play that Mint produced in spring of 2001. So that was fun for me. The novel Crooked Cross was reissued in April of this year, 2025. And I wrote an email introducing myself. And a couple days later, I got a response from Francesca Bowman, who is the general manager of the store. And the article gave the impression that there was only one copy of the play, or that the play was very rare. And that's one of the reasons that I wrote to ask. Well, Francesca repeated that. Yeah, there's only one copy. And we'd love for you to read the play, and we're excited that you're interested in maybe producing it. But we don't want to share anything with you until after our publication has come out. And they were also planning to do a reading of the play. So I knew where there would be a copy of the play. It's one of my favorite resources, which is at the British Library. Apparently, a lot of people don't know that there was censorship in England. So you had to get a license to perform a play. not to publish a book, but to perform a play, you needed a license. And I like to say that censorship is sort of the best thing that ever happened to the Mint-Theater Company, because because the Lord Chancellor, whoever it was originally, decided that he was going to keep every play. And I contacted some colleagues in London and found somebody who was willing to go and make a copy. And I sent them information about how to use the Lord Chancellor's, how to find something in that catalog. And a week or so later, I received an email with an attachment, and I opened it up. And to my astonishment, I was not looking at a typescript. I was looking at a published play. I smacked myself right, in the head and said, "You idiot. I never actually looked in any of the libraries." The play Crooked Cross was published in 1938, had a scan of it, and was able to read it. And I didn't immediately decide to do the play because it had a cast of 26. I thought, well, then that's not really possible. The truth is, I was really excited to read the play. And the first scene, there's 3 children. And I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be rough. It's just too big. And I was disappointed. I thought maybe I'll do a reading of it. And then I decided to read the play again. And on the second reading, I realized of those 26 characters, only 8 or 9 of them are important and appear more than once. And I decided that there would be a way to do the play with just the core of 2 families. And that's when I decided that I was going to direct it, because I knew that if I was going to adapt the script, it would be better if I were adapting it as the director and not simply as the artistic director. And I haven't directed a show at the Mint since 2019. I like being the producer. I love collaborating with directors, but I don't feel directing that my being the director is really essential or even important. But I knew in this instance that was the right choice. Crooked Cross was her first novel, was published in 1934, and it's set in Germany beginning on Christmas Eve, 1932, ending Midsummer Night's Eve, 1933. So it is the first 6 months of the Nazi regime in Germany. The play is focused almost entirely on the Kluger family, mother, father, 3 children, the eldest son, the middle daughter, the youngest son, all in their 20s, early 20s. The 2 boys join the Nazi Party. The middle daughter is engaged to a Jewish doctor. And there are a couple other characters in the story, but it's really essentially about the family. Carson is sort of remarkable in bringing you into the household, into the family, creating sympathy for these young boys who are looking for something to do, looking for some work, looking for something to be proud of, something to be engaged by. You have to understand that the strength of their interest comes out of incredible boredom, incredible hardship, poverty, unemployment, inflation, all of the things the humiliation of the First World War and the Treaty of Versailles, etc. And all of that is made human in the play. Sally Carson is sort of a complete mystery. Crooked Cross was her first novel. It turned out to be the first book of a trilogy. They continue the story of the Kluger family. But one was published in 1936, the other was published in 1938. She got married in 1938. She had 3 babies, and she died in 1941, breast cancer, at the age of 41. At the time of when the first book was published, well, she got some attention, but not the kind of attention that she's getting now as the novel's been republished. Because it was fiction then, and today it's history. I know people say journalism is the first draft of history, but I think fiction is an even more interesting first draft of history, because it's not trying to tell the truth, it's making an observation. So I've done a lot of research, and I can tell you, I could not find a single sit-down interview with Sally Carson. I could not. A handful of quotes, but nobody ever asked her to sit down and talk about her past. And kind of the remarkably sad thing, she died so young. I have been lucky enough to have had a couple of conversations with her granddaughters. Her granddaughters, their mother never knew Sally. They were 8 months old when their mother died. And when her husband died, their grandfather, they weren't even born. There's sort of nobody who knew her is alive today to answer questions, and nobody cared to ask questions in 1940. If you understand that she was writing in 34, 36, 38 about what she was observing, 1942, 43, 44, what she was observing was no longer important, because the story had altered in such a way, had become so much bigger, so much more horrible. In the play, you never hear the name Hitler, for example. But in the novel, there's a lot more detail. And it turns out, I've discovered, well, that Sally was either editing herself, or in some instances she was actually being censored. I've read in that Guardian article that the censor asked for the removal of all Heil Hitlers from the story. That may have just been boys greeting each other in the home or something like that. But in fact, the play, as it was first produced in 1935, 1937, Carson had a lot of concern about being even-handed, not tilting the scales too deeply in favor of the Jews and against the Nazis. Fascinating, right? We're all quite certain who was in the right and who was in the wrong. She wanted to be careful. She was worried about the British audience. She was worried about making propaganda. And the consequence of that is that she told a story with a tremendous amount of humanity. Now, it's 2025 today, and all of the scenes in the play came right out of the novel, but some of the language was changed. Sometimes she softened things. And I've gone back into the novel and allowed some of the original dialogue to be used, because I think we can handle it.